What's up, guys? Let's talk photo editing. It's one of those videos. Now, I've been on YouTube for close to 4 years, and it's one of those videos I've always shied away from because it's confusing. Not only that, it can confuse people, it's hard to explain, and I've kind of got it in my head now, some of the things that I've learned in the past and that. And before we actually get into the photo editing process for still life, I want to give you a broader knowledge base on what goes on, because if you're like me 20 years ago, I was very naive to the photo editing process. I was always told by senior photographers, get it right in camera, make sure it's nailed, you don't want to change it, that kind of thing. And then as I learned from other photographers, as the process continues, whether you're doing portrait or studio or product photography things, there's a lot of editing done. And so myself, I think they're one of the reasons why you're not going to see a photo editing video like this is because most of the guys are single silo. They do one type of photography and they think that's all there is, or that's what they need. And so if you look at Photoshop or GIMP or any of these products, there's 1,000 different menu options you can play around with, and that's where the confusion sets in. What do you learn? What do I need to learn? So myself, instead of just being a landscape photographer or wildlife photographer, myself, I've done portraits, I've done still life, flash, wildlife photography, light painting, and all those different types of photography use a little bit different tools to get the job done. So for instance, in the portrait section or the portrait photography, they use the heel brush like every photo. It removes blemishes. And as you know, you've seen the supermodels and you've seen a lot of the stuff on Sports Illustrated or these other magazines. You can make a woman look 20 years younger by removing some of her wrinkles and making her skin really vibrant with the right load-in sets. Now that you don't necessarily need for someone that's shooting wildlife photography. For wildlife photography, a lot of it is saturation, sharpness, a little bit of highlights, some dodging, and that kind of stuff. Not that those tools aren't used in portrait photography, but there's a common theme. If you do product photography, a lot of times you're removing dust spots with the healing tool or the clone tool. If you're using still life, you don't really, it's kind of cropped right. You don't have to modify it. You don't have to straighten out the angles. Everything is done meticulously. So that is part of the process, knowing what to learn for the type of photography you're doing. So this is a still life channel or portrait photography, or I should say flash photography. I'm going to show you tools in one of the next videos on how to do that with some of the light painting we do. But it's still not done yet. The editing process is almost kind of, or I should say the photography, the photo creation process is almost 3 steps. You line it up with your camera, you make the photograph. That's stage 1. Stage 2 is you edit the photo, do the best you can, clean things up, make it look very presentable. And the 3rd step, which no one talks about because a lot of people won't do it, is printing or delivering your photograph. This is tough, my friends. This is what I do to you guys every week when I create a photo, is I have to deliver it to a broad market. So take it into consideration. If you have a photograph and someone says, I want to put that in the Tokyo Big Lights on one of their electronic screens, you're probably going to have to lower down the exposure and brightness to that photograph because it's backlit. Think about those dark city nights with the big, vibrant screens. But if you take that same photograph that you've put on the big screens in Tokyo and someone says, I want a print of that, I want a 50-inch photograph of that. Well, if you print it the same way that it looks like in Tokyo on the big screens, it's going to look dull. It's going to look underexposed. So every photograph that you guys create or print, you'll have to manipulate it to the media that it's going to. For instance, I have a digital canvas, which is essentially kind of a hybrid between printing and a digital screen. That takes like 1.5 stops of exposure over normal, what I show you guys. If I'm printing on canvas, sometimes it's 2 stops and 2.5 stops higher on a canvas print than it would be for a screen such as you're viewing on. Now it depends. If it goes to a super bright screen, I might even have to lower it down a half stop to a stop. And this is the confusing part for the media delivery in which you guys view, is I'm not sure all of what you guys see with the photos that I present, because I look at the Google analytics, and essentially it says that 50% of the people view it on an iPad, 25% view it on an iPhone, Android is 10%, and some people watch it on a TV and you don't know the color gambit, you don't know the space, how much color contrast they have. That's the reason why when you see photos on the net, you don't know how it was presented originally or what kind of screen you're viewing it against, which they actually, presented, I guess, and made it to the media for it. There's a lot of different screen colorizations and contrasts and other things out there that kind of help you get a nice middle ground. But that doesn't mean if someone's viewing it on a $50 laptop that they're going to look at it and say, boy, that just does not look very good. So there's a lot of considerations to put in, and it gets even more detailed because once you create this print, you're going to look at it and you're going to re-change things. You're going to say, for this type of paper or this type of canvas or this type of screen, I need to dodge and burn from your original edit. And it's an iterative process. It keeps going back and forth until you finally feel good. And to be noticed, there's some very well-known pieces of work that has taken years of this iteration process where the photographer just says, it'd look a little bit better, and it's a refinement process. So that third step you can kind of think of as a refinement process on the whole creation. You make the photo, you edit it, you print it, and then you reiterate it, you refine it, and you keep doing the dodge burning and the highlights and the shadows until it really looks good on the specific medium that you want to try to push it to. So there you guys have it. Got questions, comments, concern? Check out this next video because we're going to get actually into the tools used for still life, I guess, editing and all that stuff. See you next week.